former President Trump's lawyers have sent cease and desist letters to three prominent Republican organizations, the RNC, the NRCC, and the NRSC, requesting that they stop using Trump's name and image to raise money for the GOP.
Democratic strategist Colin O'Hara and our colleague, national political reporter at The Hill, Jonathan Easley, join us now to discuss. Great to see you both, gentlemen.
Good to see you guys.
Morning.
Hey, guys.
Jonathan, just break down for us what happened and what it means.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually kind of hard to overstate how important this is. I mean, in addition to Trump's policies being very popular among Republicans, he's good for two things: fundraising and generating enthusiasm. And this is essentially depriving House and Senate Republicans of his fundraising prowess at a time when they're trying to retake majorities in both chambers. And, you know, it's hard to see this as anything other than payback for the 10 House Republicans and the 7 Senate Republicans that voted to impeach Trump, in addition, obviously, to the battle that ensued between Trump and Mitch McConnell. But I mean, I can tell you that these fundraising mailers that go out from the RNC, from the NRSC, from the NRCC, the ones that have Trump's name on them or his likeness or uses his family in any way to raise money are among the most profitable fundraising pitches that Republicans have. And so, I think we'll still continue to see Trump's name on some of these. I think he's told these groups that they need his permission to use his name, and I imagine he'll give that in some instances. But it's definitely a big development as Republicans seek to take back the House and Senate.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Colin, to put on your just general strategist hat, I mean, Trump is the single most popular figure in the Republican Party. He's easily the easiest way to raise money. So the fact that he's doing this, he's basically telling them, he's like, you can only use it whenever I want. It's just more in terms of reinserting his control over how he gets future candidates picked and how he doesn't.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's also more to it than what we're actually kind of discussing here today. We're looking at it from a solely political angle. And while we can argue about whether or not Donald Trump understands politics or understood how to run the office of the presidency, one thing we can absolutely be sure of is that he understands branding. In many cases, his business was simply his brand on X product, and he didn't even own or support the product. They were simply renting his name. So the idea that he's going to let the Republican Party simply use his name without any profit being directed specifically towards him, a future campaign effort, or super PAC that he's launched or going to launch, really is just kind of improbable. Like, Donald Trump is going to control the brand of Donald Trump, and whether or not that means he's going to point it towards other Republican candidates that are going to challenge incumbent members, we'll have to see. But to think that he's going to let the Republican Party make money off of his name when he is not being included in that is just foolhardy. This is a businessman who understands branding better than anyone we've arguably ever seen in politics.
Yeah,
and that's
John,
a good point.
I think that's a great point. How is that different from how other past presidents have viewed their post-presidency?
Well, I mean, I'm not aware of this ever happening before. I mean, like Colin was saying, Trump is unique in that his entire life has been about branding and licensing his name. So in some regards, it does make sense there. But I mean, Trump has said publicly that his top priority is to elect conservatives and put Republicans back into the majority. And this works against that. I mean, there's no other way to put it. This works against that stated goal. Now, it seems like it's almost punishing, all Republicans for the votes of about 10 in the House and 7 in the Senate. But it's going to have an impact. And Trump also, the other big news out of this weekend was Trump saying that he's going to travel to Alaska to campaign against Lisa Murkowski. I mean, that's sort of another big development. It's not hugely surprising. We've already seen Trump's allies campaigning against Liz Cheney in Wyoming, and we can expect Trump to back more primary challenges. But he's very much taking this feud seriously, and it doesn't seem to be ratcheting down at all.
Yeah, certainly. Colin, from your perspective in the midterms, is it better for the Democrats the more that Trump is involved or less? What do you think?
Look, I think it's ultimately better. One would argue that turnout operations in 2020, there was no better motivator, especially during COVID when Democrats couldn't have really on-the-ground organizers to turn people out, than Donald Trump. So right. I think there's a whole lot of Democrats who are happy that he's going to be a part of and or potentially associated with certain candidates. And, look, when it comes to them having in-the-family fights before they actually get into the real fight in the general election, I'm all for it as a Democratic strategist. I ultimately don't really think that it's going to have that large of effect on Republicans' fundraising ability. There's one thing that Republicans have had a great deal of success in and year out, midterms or not, in power or not, is raising a ton of money to take on Democrats. So ultimately, I think when it comes to Republicans, they're going to have all the money they need to compete. It's just whether or not it's going to be funneling through Donald Trump and or the other organizations that support Republican candidates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
well said,
interesting.
guys. All right, stick with us. More Team Rising right after this.